Story 1. They dominate conversations and do not let others get a word in. Story 2. People who make everything about themselves grasp at straws in conversation to find a reason to brag. Story 3. The false positivity and overly cheerful tone people adopt when they are clearly following advice from bad self-help books. Story 4. Some people cannot think for themselves. Everything they say is filtered through politics and religion. At some point in your life, you must separate those influences from how you actually feel. I can tell when they disagree, but their crowd says one thing and they just go along with it. I have always considered people like that untrustworthy. They seek approval from people who do not matter and would hurt those close to them to please the majority. Story 5. When they blame others for their failures or their station in life. Story 6. People who have strong opinions about things they know little about. Story 7. Grandiosity. Overbearing energy vampires who talk only about themselves and dominate the conversation. Story 8. If someone treats waitstaff, animals, children, elderly, or disabled people poorly, they do not get a second chance. They have already shown their true colors. Story 9. They act as if they are the coolest person in the world when others are not effortlessly original or interesting. Story 10. They are professional victims and the worst personality type, in my opinion. Story 11. Self-righteousness or hyper-individualistic rhetoric. You are not always right about everything, and you are not the center of the universe, chica. Story 12. A superiority complex is when someone truly believes and acts as if they are better than you and that you are beneath them. I know people in my family who are like this, and it drives me mad. Story 13. Usually it is not one thing. It is a collection of red flags that add up. When I see someone who is rude to a worker, a cashier, waitstaff, a janitor, or others, it tells me the person either places their own importance too high or does not appreciate the people who toil in the background to keep streets clean and food safe. I believe these people are far more important and contribute more to society than many rich people who tend to treat them as an irritant. Story 14. A driver honked their horn behind me while I waited for a cyclist to cross the intersection. Have some damn patience, people. Story 15. Making everything about politics or religion. I'm not a bitch. I'm just brutally honest. Being rude to customer service workers. Littering. Being rude or cruel to animals. Story 16. Someone who always needs to one-up others in conversation utterly pisses me off. Story 17. Treating service workers like shit really cranks my gears. If you don't tip them, pretend they are not there, act dismissive toward them, or in any way convey that they are not your equal, we will fight. Every single one of us has done service work. This country would not accomplish a damn thing in any sector without service workers. Did the pandemic teach us nothing? Treating animals as irrelevant or replaceable and treating kids as stupid are wrong. Don't be a dick, especially to beings who have less power in the moment than you do. Story 18. I am a pessimist. It is okay to be both, but Debbie Downers do not last in my life. Some remain constant. Story 19. When we are dealing with a manager or leader, it can be unacceptable for them to ignore or dismiss employee frustration about a decision. Even worse is when the manager continues to act as if you are close friends despite your obvious frustration. It seems they are either naive or in denial about your feelings. Story 20. When someone chews gum with an open mouth, especially while talking. Story 21. Unnecessarily serious and so boring it feels forced. Do not bring that black cloud around me. Story 22. People who take offense at the smallest things and make everything about themselves. Story 23. Instant dislike usually comes from arrogance dressed as confidence. People who need to dominate every room or conversation aren't showing strength. They're showing insecurity. Respect is quiet, insecurity is loud, and the louder it gets, the faster I check out. Story 24. Talking over everyone and making everything about them. Insecurity is loud, and confidence is silent. Story 25. They are loud and have an attitude of I can do whatever I want, and if no one likes me, they can go away. They are not humble, modest, or genuine. Story 26. They think they are smarter and better than everyone else without a valid reason and feel the need to correct, contradict, or trash talk everything you say or do. Story 27. Not asking me any questions, or ignoring me and only talking to my partner. Or, after learning one thing about my personality, saying, "Oh my God, we are twins." Story 28. People who refer in conversation to complete strangers without explaining who they are and expect me to know. Person I met 30 minutes ago said, "That is what I was saying to Scott the other day when he was at my house. But he told Jennifer when I told him not to, and now Rick is mad at me." Internal monologue. I have no idea who any of these people are. You gave me no context. Story 29. This is probably my least justifiable pet peeve. When someone ends nearly every sentence with a request for validation. For example, I went over to Brandy and told her off, you know what I mean? She said, and I ended up pissed. I had a friend and a couple of coworkers who did this. It drives me batty. It is not that they are bad people. That would almost be preferable because then I could hate them. I simply loathe that stupid question at the end of every statement. Story 30. If they mistreat animals or use them for their own gain, for example by breeding and selling them. Story 31. Basic etiquette is simple. Do not put your finger in your mouth, and clean up when you are in a group. Cover your mouth when sneezing or coughing. I have been around people who actually do that. Story 32. Telling me what to do, even though it doesn't affect them or me in any way. Shut the fuck up. I don't care. Stop trying to control me or put words in my mouth. Story 33. Low emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and self-confidence. Story 34. If someone pretends to be woke but secretly talks behind everyone's back, I see right through them and quietly start planning ways to avoid them forever. Story 35. Hating children and animals and proud of it. No, I do not mean those who simply do not want them. I mean literal haters who wish them harm. Story 36. When a person does not ask anything but you try to continue the conversation. Story 37. Anyone impersonating a Kardashian with vocal fry, dead eyes, coma-like speech, and a 4-year-old vocabulary. Also people who are loud, overly animated, or clingy when they barely know you. Story 38. Body odor not caused by manual work or sports, but by poor hygiene. Story 39. A person who gossips or speaks badly about others when they are not present. Story 40. When someone will not stop wearing cologne and perfume in excessive amounts. Story 41. If I can hear someone smacking, swallowing loudly, chewing, or making any food or drink-related noises, I cannot be around them. I dislike smarmy, smug attitudes that show off fake intelligence. For some reason, and I am from the South, this happens a lot. If people pronounce words that should have a soft A sound with a hard A sound, we will not get along. For example, bass pronounced as bass and ass pronounced as ace. I don't know why. Story 42. When they ask for money or do not pay their share of a bill. Story 43. If someone only says I and never you, I prefer to talk to the person, not their ego. Story 44. When you are in the middle of a conversation and the person you are with meets someone they know but does not introduce you, leaving you awkwardly standing there. Story 45. This applies when someone is unkind or disrespectful to service providers, shows rudeness, aggressiveness, or overly reactive responses, is unwilling to compromise when discussing different points of view, or is unable to respect other people's points of view. Story 46. I have nothing against that type of person. They are just not someone I would form a friendship with. Loud party people. Very extroverted people who seek a lot of attention. People who have 10,000 friends but never have deep connections with them. Story 47. Arrogance combined with zero self-awareness is an automatic turn-off for me. You can be confident and that is fine, but if someone walks around acting as if the world owes them everything and cannot see how annoying that is, I find it off-putting. Story 48. I immediately dislike someone who lights a cigarette. I have severe lung damage from being in an iron lung during polio. It is chronic, so smoke greatly harms my breathing. I know many people who smoke and generally like them, but their smoking prevents close friendship. Even if they do not smoke around me, they still smell of smoke. I also do not usually like someone who begins every conversation with the pronouns I or me. Story 49. When people loudly spout white supremacist talking points unprompted, that will definitely make me dislike them. I usually like people, and it is difficult to make me dislike someone. So if I dislike you, you really did fuck up. Story 50. When people never admit their mistakes and think they are always right. Story 51. Ignoring others when they speak, failing to acknowledge them, and talking over them. Story 52. If they are sarcastic right away, I usually misread it and take it as a threat. Story 53. They brag about themselves, their children, their money, their possessions, and their accomplishments, and often embellish them. Story 54. When everything you or anyone else says, whether an observation or a story, seems to have already happened to them, when they like the same things, have been there and done that, and seem to match you exactly, I do not trust that. Story 55. Being rude is almost never justified and reveals who someone really is. Everyone has bad days, and I try to be understanding, but if you are dismissive of a server at a restaurant or snap at them, there will not be a good relationship of any kind. You will not be a lover, a friend, or a business partner, whether employer or employee. Story 56. They are delusional and reject the existence of mental illness. Story 57. I am 68 years old and would like to think that I have garnered some wisdom in my years. Learning that someone voted for Trump twice stops me dead in my tracks, and I immediately assume not the worst of them exactly, but that we are on different wavelengths, paths, or whatever in life. To be honest, I also assume that they are not comfortable with gay people and people of color coming into their lives, much less assuming positions of authority in our country, including women, which further separates us. I hate that I am not able to look past a person's political stance to see them for who they really are. I have lived half my life in Georgia, where I currently reside, and I have tried. Honestly, it was never really an issue until the 2016 election. I am coming to believe that I have never really understood human nature at all. It stinks. Story 58. When someone does not seem to know what the word no means, it does not matter what the situation is. If I do not want you to buy me something, if I am not interested in you romantically, or if I cannot help with a request, no still means no. I need you to respect that and understand that it is not an invitation to try to convince me otherwise or to act because you think I will change my mind. I will also say yes when a request is reasonable and possible. Story 59. When someone only talks about themselves, or when you tell them something and they respond by competing and saying they have already done it, they minimize what you were saying. Story 60. Making fun of a person's calligraphy, using the term autistic as an insult, and lying about everything. Story 61. They call me schizophrenic or autistic when I stand up for myself. Story 62. When someone is a loser, everything in their life is someone else's fault. They refuse to work to fix it but complain chronically to the point you hate working with them or receiving a phone call. Anyone who talks about politics, it's like being in high school. Everything is loud and wrong. Being rude to someone you just met because of their gender, race, or any other reason. Going on a date and they show up looking like a slob, yet they point out your flaws and do not accept criticism of their own. Having your phone on speaker in a public place. I do not care why, earbuds exist for a reason. Stop shouting your business across the store and then getting mad when people make fun of you because we cannot mind our own business or we have to listen to your music, TikTok, or television at full volume in public. As I get older, I am more intolerant of people's ignorance. Bring back lockdown and let these people stay home, or maybe I should just stay home laughing out loud. Story 63. Smoking and vaping are not only incredibly gross, they ruin the entire area around them and smell bad. Story 64. When people ask questions on the AskReddit subreddit that have been asked thousands of times before. Story 65. The red hat and the general whiff of unwiped ass you get around those types of folks. Story 66. I do not know. It is always different, but I immediately vibe check people in my mind, and it often sticks. Story 67. It could be any number of things. I will know within seconds of being near them, even across the room, without any direct communication. Story 68. People who try to bond by speaking negatively about others only make me trust them less. Story 69. They mention anything related to crystals, astrology, or wellness. Story 70. They stonewall and restrict information because they do not want you to know too much about the job. Story 71. They use terms of endearment with me when we have just met. Story 72. When someone is always saying, "I can't afford it," I tell them to go out to lunch and get their nails done. That is manipulation and a victim mentality. Yes, some people struggle, but why does anyone need to know someone else's financial situation? Story 73. If someone acts tough toward timid people, I react. I like pressing limits, and it awakens something in me. I like dominating dominant people. Life is a contest to me. Story 74. When they behave inconsiderately toward others. Story 75. People who always self-victimize never accept responsibility. It is always someone else's fault. Story 76. If people try to bond by putting someone else down, it happens so often at work. Story 77. I really dislike people who think they are superior to others and who don't know their boundaries. I can't stand them, lalo na kapag sobra na silang self-centered sa mga sinasabi nila tungkol sa sarili nila. Story 78. Negativity. If you do not know how to laugh and you are just going to complain constantly, I do not want to know you. Life can be difficult. Make your own fun along the way. Diffuse the misery. Do not create more. Story 79. When someone thinks and acts like they're better than others, or when people assume I'm a certain way based on how I look or the kind of job I do. Story 80. Unwilling to change one's view when presented with overwhelming evidence. Story 81. I get feelings about people. I never know what they mean. I absolutely judge a book by its cover, and 9 times out of 10 I'm right. It's probably my subconscious picking up things my conscious mind doesn't recognize, but I like pretending I have woo-woo powers. Story 82. People who take themselves too seriously and don't know how to take a step back and laugh at themselves. Story 83. Smell. Wearing too much perfume or not wearing deodorant is off-putting. I especially abhor people who use perfume instead of deodorant. Story 84. If they cannot speak a single sentence without using foul language, I will have no respect for them. Story 85. I am being deliberately ignored by a group. They do not even bother to smile, which makes the situation awkward. Story 86. It is maddening and egotistical when people refuse to admit they are wrong or apologize. Story 87. When they have any kind of double standard. Story 88. Constantly replying with what to everything you say forces you to repeat yourself. Story 89. When people can't take a joke, they are sad and serious. Life is for having fun, Karen. Story 90. They act as if they are better than I am, criticizing me and claiming to know more about my own life. Story 91. Someone is coughing. I do not care if it is just allergies. Please step outside. Story 92. People who make their beliefs their whole personality are not for me. I had a friend who moved from cause to cause, making each one their entire being. Hence the phrase, had a friend. Story 93. Bossiness. A know-it-all attitude. Arrogance and condescension. Domineering tendencies. Rudeness and tactlessness. Story 94. Fans of the Green Bay Packers are trash. Story 95. I have a sensitive nose. I can't stand stinky people. In my line of work, they're everywhere. Story 96. This may be unpopular, but when they are too nice, positive, and friendly, it comes across as insincere and makes me feel like you are hiding something. Story 97. People who report coworkers for minor mistakes and get them in trouble. Story 98. Being selfish and self-absorbed, failing to acknowledge other people's feelings, frequently using foul language, being overly judgmental about other people's appearance. Story 99. During our first conversation, when someone tells anecdotes or shares impressions about where we are, they often say things like, I am a very honest person. I never lie. So I tell them exactly what they said, because I do not like to play games. How do you like the dish? I made it. I love to cook. I took lessons when I was studying. I loved the movie. I think a lot about those kinds of themes. I am very sensitive about them. Did you meet her? She is my best friend. We are so funny together. And so on. If you need to sell me a good image of yourself so badly in the minutes after our first meeting, I immediately know there is something about you I will not like. Guaranteed. If you truly have these qualities, they will speak for themselves in due time. You do not need to lobby me. Story 100. Their whole personality is their politics. Get a life, people. Story 101. Anyone who speaks loudly, yells, or seeks attention in any way. Story 102. If they talk a lot about themselves and finally give you some space, they often cut you off by replying with a similar story from their own life. I know that's how humans communicate with each other, but when they don't even try to reflect on your point of view and instead start spiraling about themselves, it's disgusting. By the way, sorry for my English, I am French. Story 103. Being an information technology snob, I dislike most of my colleagues with their analytical thinking, in other words, rationalizing their dick personality. Story 104. They are trying to convince me they are a good person because they belong to a church or are religious. Story 105. When someone always says they did better than you. Story 106. I instantly dislike someone who brags about themselves or acts like a know-it-all, or who is obviously full of themselves in their appearance, wearing 45 layers of makeup, with perfect hair and visible breasts. Story 107. If a woman calls me sweetie or darling in almost every sentence. Story 108. Clearly fake personality and white lies are used to make a good impression. I do not trust them. Story 109. People who are mean, cruel, and instigate toxic drama because they seem to enjoy it. Story 110. Make sure I know you are a Republican or a Christian within the first 2 minutes of conversation. Alternatively, say have a blessed day. Story 111. When I see someone treating others poorly, I respond in kind. It is my golden rule. Treat people as they treat you. If you treat the world poorly, it will treat you poorly. If you sacrifice yourself for the world should sacrifice itself for you. If you are good to others, they should be good to you. Story 112. You are loudly forcing me into questions and answers because you cannot stop yourself from controlling others. You are gregarious. Why are you yelling? Story 113. When they do not ask about me and only talk or brag about themselves. Story 114. Nosiness is asking prying, invasive questions, such as why you need the information and what you intend to do with it. Story 115. It depends on the situation, but if they disrespect their parents, there may be consequences. Story 116. Skip any obvious responses, such as racism and so on, if they are whiny or manipulative. Story 117. That mentality is, that's a nice story about you, but let's get back to talking about me. Story 118. If they live in the United States and voted for Trump, it is especially notable if they wear his merchandise. Story 119. When someone is spatially unaware of their surroundings, they act as if they are the only person who exists or matters. For example, people walking in the middle of parking lot lanes where vehicles enter and exit. People walking slowly through grocery store aisles and blocking others. Groups gathering to socialize while standing in line at fairs, vendor areas, or farmers markets. Large groups walking slowly and obstructively through malls or other crowded events. Story 120. People who know things solely based on their feelings or emotions, unless the topic is how they are currently feeling. Story 121. They dismiss other people's ideas and shoot down suggestions or viewpoints that differ from their own. Story 122. Arrogance. Trying to look like a know-it-all although you feel empty inside. Story 123. If we just met and they brag about their money or ask nosy questions about mine, that is rude. No one owes you answers. They act as if they are entitled to know all your business. It's the worst. Story 124. When someone disrespects their parents, holds misogynistic views about the opposite sex, claims to understand what others go through, or says in a relationship that they own you. Story 125. Arrogance. Constantly one-upping others, and refusing to admit mistakes or apologize. Story 126. When a random person tries to strike up a conversation with me while I'm out, it's not their fault for not knowing, but I really hate being bothered when I'm doing anything. I'm in my head, in my happy place, and then I'm rudely yanked away from that inner sanctuary. Story 127. When I meet a new person, I ask if they want to know my pronouns. If they say anything other than absolutely, they are on my shit list. I am extremely androgynous, so if they deny or mumble some bullshit, I just say, okay, then you can guess. This happened with a new coworker after he said he did not care about that stuff. He started calling me man and bro at work, and I told my manager, and he got in trouble, laughing out loud. Story 128. Constantly using your name when talking to you is a lame used car salesman tactic. It is not only manipulative, it also implies they think you are a simpleton who will become uncontrollably excited when you hear your name often. Also, people who call you buddy. Story 129. Smoking and frequent profanity are deal breakers. Story 130. People who try to gain sympathy from others by wallowing in their misfortunes or bad luck. Story 131. They don't even pretend to look at my face. They only look at my breasts. Story 132. They explain things such as how the economy works or any other topic, and then tell you to be quiet and not respond unless they ask you a question. Story 133. They are immature for their age and make poor decisions. It makes my blood boil. Story 134. People who do not get out of the fucking fast lane and those who drive slower than 18-wheelers. Fuck those people. They do not deserve to be liked. Story 135. Mentioning God, being vegetarian, not having a television, or rescuing a pet are things I do not care about or connect with. Good for you. Now shut up and just order your food. Story 136. If the first thing I learn about a person is their pronouns, sexual orientation, religion, or political affiliation, I avoid approaching them again. I have met people like that before, and they were unpleasant. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.